Hello, good evening. Can you hear me, Nishadi?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. Right, so the other day, what was the unit that we discussed? Can you remember the unit number? We didn't meet last week before that. What was the unit that we discussed? It was unit 5, if you remember right, or if you go through your records, we did day 1's content related to unit 5. So today we need to handle the day 2's content of unit 5, right? So unit 5 is all about the different perspectives of grammar. We saw the different views connected to grammar. What were they? The structural view. Look at just to recap what we have done since we couldn't meet last week. This is what we did on day 1 of unit 5. We focused on the different viewpoints or perspectives connected to teaching language and grammar. Basically, structural grammar by teaching the structures of the language, or maybe by teaching the grammatical structures of the language. They believed language can be taught. Then the prescriptive grammar, which we've discussed about um, how to use language in a very elite manner. Accurate language usage was the focus. They didn't allow any room for making errors, and it was more or less a prestigious form of language that was focused under prescriptive grammar. Then we have the descriptive grammar and also the functional grammar. And we talked about the different language functions connected to functional grammar. When it comes to functional grammar, what is being taught is predominantly the different language functions. Using different exponents, language functions are taught. And we also discussed about several language functions like that of self-introduction, greeting, requesting, and all those. This is what we did on day 1. Today, we need to focus on day 2, right? So, see, I hope you have completed the self-study task. If you haven't, please do make it a point to finish it off. Then today, on day 2, the functional grammar continues. The other day, we identified the different language functions that need to be taught to the learners. Today, we are going to focus on the exponents that need to be taught in terms of different language functions. It can be requesting or apologizing or any other language function. How are the language functions expressed? By using different exponents. So what are the possible exponents that can be used to teach that particular language function, and how to decide on those exponents, which exponent to teach and which exponent to just ignore? How can we decide upon these exponents? Then the methodology or the procedure connected to doing a functional lesson. We are talking about different perspectives of grammar. So under functional grammar, when it comes to teaching grammar using language functions, what is the procedure that the teacher needs to follow? That is what is highlighted over here. Then comes the third subtopic, background for teaching descriptive or functional grammar. right? So both descriptive functional grammar, they are interconnected. That is why you find both of them coming together. The principles, the guiding principles the teacher needs to remember in terms of descriptive functional grammar. First of all, what are language exponents? In descriptive functional grammar, language functions are taught using language exponents. So what are language exponents? The language we use to express a function is called an exponent. Usually, the exponents can be a single word or they can be even a set phrase, right? So any structure that we use to perform a language function is known to be a language exponent. See, in order to apologize, to perform the language function of apologizing, you can just use one single word, sorry, or I am sorry, or maybe I'm extremely sorry, right? So likewise, different exponents can be utilized to perform a particular language function. So which exponent to teach the learners depends upon the learner level. Based on the learner level, we need to pick and choose the right exponent that we have to introduce to them. That is one issue. Then also we need to focus on the situation in which they are supposed to use that exponent. Are they expected to use a particular exponent in a very formal situation? Or are they expected to use or perform that particular language function mostly in an informal setup? Thereby, we can utilize an informal exponent. If they are expected to use or perform that function in a formal setup, then it has to be an appropriate exponent that can be used in a formal setup, right? So not only the learner level, but also where the learner is going to use or going to perform that language function needs to be taken into account. Look at the second part of it. Here are 5 different exponents of inviting someone to lunch. See how they are different from one another. All 5 are performing the same function, but you can't use them identically. Go through them and tell me what is the difference, or based upon what you can classify them. When are you going to say, come for lunch, or maybe come for lunch with us? Which one do you think is a very formal kind of an invitation, which reflects a formal kind of an invitation? Among these 5, which one is very formal?
Third one, would you like to come for lunch with us?
Yeah. Would you like to come for lunch with us? Look at the last one. What about that?
That is also formal.
Right. So when it comes to oral language or in an oral context, when you're inviting someone orally, most probably the third one will be used. But when it comes to communication. It can be an invitation. If you send out an invitation card or any other form of written invitation, the last one, we would be very pleased if you could join us for lunch. Maybe a wedding invitation or maybe some other, inviting them for some other occasion. So see, depending upon the context, depending upon the medium, whether it's going to be the oral medium of invitation or written medium of invitation, the exponents differ. So we can't just decide haphazardly which exponent to teach. Based upon the context of the set lesson, we need to introduce the most suitable exponent. Read. Exponents usually reflect three different levels of formality in the language. Formal exponents, in which the exponents are used in a very formal situation. Seriousness, they bring out seriousness or cautiousness. Informal exponents, mostly used in a relaxed atmosphere or maybe among friends or relatives in a day-to-day setup. And then you have the neutral exponents, somewhat between the formal and informal, and it also gets related to the person or maybe to whom it is getting addressed. Usually, according to our culture, when we address or when we use the language with someone who is elder to us or maybe a person who is in a higher rank than that of us, for respect's sake, it becomes more formal. The exponent that is used is either formal or neutral. Right? So the role relationship matters. The situation or the context in which it is used matters. Just we can't decide upon an exponent. Right? So definitely we need to look into three important issues. First and foremost, the learner level. Can the learner handle this particular exponent? If he is able to handle, then worth introducing it and trying to explain and teach it. If the learner is very low and we are trying to teach him a very lengthy exponent, then it will be a failure. So the learner level comes first, then the context or the situation in which it is used, where even the role relationship between the writer and the reader or listener and the speaker too has to be taken into account. It's important to use the level of formality that suits a situation, right? So always think of the context and relate it to the formality, whether it's really formal exponents are needed or is it just informal ones or neutral ones? This is called appropriacy. Appropriate exponents will get decided. So first of all, we need to know how to identify the language function and then to pick and choose the right exponent that would perform that language function. Now look at these. 5 different exponents are given over here. Tell me, in terms of formality, which ones are going to be the neutral ones, then the informal ones and the formal ones. Just go through them and try to classify.
First one and third one are formal.
I was
Oh.
wondering if I could have the salt, please. Would you mind? Yeah.
Fourth and fifth are neutral,
Okay.
and second and sixth is informal.
Second and sixth. Sixth one is really informal. Pass me the salt. What about Samshab? Okay. So that is connected to deciding the components and the issues we need to take into account. What are the three issues that you will focus on when deciding the component? What are the important issues that we will take into account in order to decide which exponent to introduce? Level of the learner. What is the second one? Are you there?
The situation,
Okay, the context or the situation. And the third one, what relationship?
the
Role
person,
relationship, right? So the role relationship between the speaker and the listener. Mostly it's for oral communication, but if at all, if it is connected to written communication, then it becomes the reader and the writer. Whatever said and done, the role relationship, the context, and the learner level. Remember those three aspects very clearly that you need to focus on before deciding on the this thing, exponents. Then you have the exponents for different language functions. Just go through the different language functions that are mentioned over here, and also some possible exponents. These are not the only exponents, these are some possible examples that you can utilize. Just go through them, read up first. Now think, in order to express disagreement for something, if you wish to come out with disagreement, if you don't agree with a particular thought or an opinion, think of any exponent that you can use to express disagreement. They can be neutral, they can be formal, they can. Now, as a whole, we are discussing about any possible exponent that we can use to express disagreement. With a set of weak learners, if your learners are really weak, how can you make them express disagreement? Sorry, what else can you combine with sorry? Sorry, I don't agree.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I am not in favor of it. It is an exponent. It is an exponent that you can use to express disagreement. Think of any other exponent for disagreement. I'm not of the same opinion.
I'm
Right?
afraid I don't have the same opinion.
I don't have the same opinion. I'm afraid I don't have the same opinion. I can't approve. Right? So that is also an exponent to express disagreement. Think of two separate ones to express getting excused if you want to get excused maybe from your superior or from somebody else. How are you going to express that? Think of a very simple exponent.
Excuse me, would you mind if I did this
Yeah.
in a
Excuse me.
formal way?
Yeah. Excuse me. Can I leave? Or excuse me. Even just excuse me would serve the purpose. Something neutral.
Excuse me, I need to.
Yeah. Excuse me, I need to speak to you, or I need to get excused, or I want to leave this place likewise. Then for the third one, asking for an opinion.
In a formal way, I would appreciate hearing your opinion on this matter.
Yeah, I would appreciate your view regarding this.
In
Can I
neutral,
have your opinion here?
what do you think about this?
What do you think about it here?
Informal, what's your take on this?
Yeah, right. What's your take on this? So those are all different exponents that we can utilize depending upon the level of the learner. Now, we are just randomly eliciting and discussing possible exponents, but definitely the learner level matters. The learner should be able to comprehend or use those exponents in a meaningful manner. So, depending on the learner level, we will first of all decide which ones can fall into that particular group. Afterwards, we will think of the context and also the role relationship. Then comes teaching language functions. Procedure involved in teaching language functions. Go through what you have to do first, then the second step, and afterwards. First of all, whatever language function that we teach, they should be contextualized. We can use different texts to contextualize. You can use a dialogue, mostly dialogues or role plays are used since they perform a suitable communicative function. But whatever said and done, it can be a story, it can be a speech, it can be just an announcement. Definitely, the language function should get contextualized. That is what is stated here, presenting the functions in a dialogue. Select real interaction between real speakers. That means the situation. It can be a doctor and a patient or any other real situation like that of a customer and a shopkeeper or a parent and a child. Realistic situations should be chosen and the function should get contextualized. Setting and indicating to the role relationship between the speakers. Before we make them use those language functions, the teacher needs to elicit who are the people speaking, involved in that dialogue. What relationship do they have? Are they mother and daughter, or are they teacher and student? So that is why presenting them in a in an appropriate format becomes very important. It can be in the format of a dialogue, or maybe in the format of a role play, or any other relevant text. Letting the target function occur naturally, not an artificial way of conversation, but a natural way of conversation, representing the one that native speakers use most frequently in that situation. That means make sure to utilize real life situations where they can interact freely, or where they will be able to transfer what they have used in the classroom, even maybe in an outer space whenever they need to use the language. Avoiding the dialogues that seem an artificial context for the function, right? So no need to have imaginary kind of dialogues. Suppose if you go to the moon or happen to become an astronaut. Likewise, very improbable situations. Don't try to create those kind of artificial or remote possible situations. As much as possible, make use of the day-to-day context or day-to-day situations that they will confront, where they need to. So after contextualizing, the first stage or the first step is contextualizing the language function. We are not contextualizing the language functions. Basically, the exponents are used in proper context. That's how it goes. Then comes highlighting the function in the dialogue. Now the dialogue is there. The learners are provided with the dialogue. The teacher can display a copy of that dialogue on the board so that the entire class can view it. There, whatever the language exponent that are being used to express agreement or maybe requesting or apologizing, those have to get highlighted. You can or maybe circle them or use any technique and highlight them. See, exploiting the dialogues and have the students discover instances of the target function and underline them. We can give one example. At once you can't make them to underline all the, highlight all the functions. Teacher can give one example and ask them to identify any other possible exponents that are expressing disagreement in the dialogue. Right? So whatever said and done, at the end of the second step, there will be several exponents connected to one language function highlighted in the dialogue. Right? If you are intending to teach suggestions, any language function, any exponents that you can use to make suggestions, it can be 2, it can be 3, it can be 5. Depending on the length of the dialogue or role play, those exponents will get highlighted. Develop a grid that allows a visual display of the language forms. Now, here, when we highlight, we may underline or we may draw a circle or use an asterisk and highlight in the dialogue itself. Now, what is happening over here? The second step, those are separated. Those structures or exponents are separated and they are shown as a standalone exponent. When it questions, these are the 3 possible exponents that you can use so that they will get registered in the mind better. When they look at it in the entire context, sometimes the students might miss out on that exponent. That is why here they are presented in a grid form, like what we here. You indicate the language function and also the exponents separately. Next to the dialogue, you have this particular grid as well, so that it will make more sense and it will get registered in the learner's mind quickly. Right? So those are the basic steps that we need to remember. Contextualizing, highlight, provide an example, and then make them identify the rest of the exponents. And then separate the exponent and put it into a grid form. Display the exponent on the whiteboard, the grid on the whiteboard or OHP. Arrange them according to the formality level. Formal ones, informal ones, neutral ones, likewise. Model the correct linguistic form. Teacher articulating those exponents. Oral articulation. Modeling in the sense, oral articulation of those exponents. Focusing on meaning and communication. Right? So remember, the first two are the most important steps in the procedure of a functional grammar lesson. If the first two are addressed properly, the rest of it, you don't need to bother much. They will automatically fall at their own place. Right? So here you don't have much to do. For the third stage, providing tasks. It can be a different dialogue or a different role play or any other text on which the learners are expected to work. So you can give a similar situation and ask them to use a proper exponent and complete the dialogue and interact with each other. Pair work, group work practices are used and they are made to communicate with each other using the particular exponent. Right? So you don't have any teaching part to be done over here in the third stage. The teaching part is highlighted in the first and the second stage, mostly in the second stage. Until the teacher models the correct linguistic form and makes the class to repeat, you model and you drill. That is not mentioned over here, but here you need to remember just modeling itself will not be sufficient enough. The learners or maybe the entire class is made to repeat that particular exponent. Make sure the third stage, the rest of the third stage, make sure that the exercises are not simply mechanical transformation, but they could supply correct linguistic form. That means make sure that the learners use the exponents meaningfully. That is what is highlighted. Provide adequate practice. Encourage the exchange of personal information during communication. That means utilize more realistic or maybe personal situations where they need to use those exponents. Then assigning few more tasks for them to maybe to perform at home, or if time permits, they can do it in the class itself and provide feedback. Right? So the third and the fourth, you don't have much to do. The only thing you need to be well aware of is the preparation of probable tasks, appropriate tasks when it comes to the practice production stage. Whatever the task that you assign should be realistic. They should reflect the realistic situation or the real context that the learners might encounter in their day-to-day life. Other than that, you don't have much to except to assign the task, give instruction, and also provide feedback. Tell me the procedure once again, go through the entire process and tell me when it comes to a function-based lesson, how it should get started. You can use a warmer or any other simple activity, it doesn't matter. But the most important points that we need to remember. How should the exponents get presented to the learners? How should the teacher present the exponents to the learners? Can we present the exponents in isolation to the learners?
No, present through a dialogue.
Right, so we have to present them in a proper context, in a real context, most probably using a dialogue. After that, what else should be done? Now you have presented the dialogue, presented the exponents, you have embedded the exponents into, you have prepared a very attractive dialogue and distributed it among the students. What else should be done as the next step?
Then we should let the students to discover instances.
They need to discover or find out the different exponents. Can they do by themselves? Do you think they do by themselves? What should you do? Look at the second one.
With the proper guys. With,
Okay,
we should help them.
we should help
Highlighting
them.
the
First of
function.
all, the dialogue or a copy should be displayed on the board and an example needs to be provided. Right, so you have to highlight one exponent that is connected to that language function. Highlighted one exponent, let's assume you have highlighted one exponent and you have asked them to highlight the rest. Maybe you can tell them the number. There are 3 more for you to find out. Try to find out all 3. One can be in the latter part of the dialogue, another one can be somewhere in the middle. So you can give certain clues and help them to identify those exponents. Let's assume now they have identified all the 3 exponents. What's going to be the next stage or the next step? What's going to happen in the next step?
Displaying the exponents.
Teacher, explain. Before explaining, you have to do something. You need to explain, but before that,
No, displaying the exponent.
display here. Okay. You display, you glean it out and display it alone in the in a form of a grid. Right, okay. You separate the exponent from the dialogue and display it in the form of a grid. In the grid, you put and maybe make them to identify the exponent and the language function separately. After that,
Arrange them according to formality level.
yeah, You arrange them according to formality level. You are on one important step. What is it? Look at it.
Model the correct linguistic forms.
Right. Articulate, right? Loud, not reading. You speak out the correct, with correct intonation, pitch, pause, and everything. You articulate the particular exponent, right? So teacher articulates, teacher models and drills the linguistic form. After which you can explain, or even soon after explaining, you can articulate it and drill it. But make sure to do this before explaining or after explaining, it doesn't matter. But definitely, orally, the exponent has to be drilled. Suppose if they go wrong in their pronunciation, this is where we have an opportunity to check out. Therefore, this has to be done. Then what is followed after that?
Then we should let them practice, madam.
Yeah, we have to give them some task, assign them appropriate task and make them practice the exponent, and also give them some homework related to that. And then you come towards the activities that can be used to teach language functions, irrespective of the kind of functions. When it comes to a communicative activity, expressing any language function, look at the possible activities or tasks. Information gap tasks. You assign them with a problem and they have to communicate, maybe in their groups or it can be a pair work, and try to find solution. For example, a student is coming late. Every day he is getting late to school. What can be, or maybe how are you going to solve this problem? You can assign two of them to speak, to discuss, and come out with probable answers, reasons, right? So that is just a simple example. Likewise, you can think of any other situation where they might need to utilize a said language exponent. If you want to buy a kilo of sugar, how are you going to ask from the shopkeeper? So one has to be the shopkeeper, the other one has to be the customer, and you make them converse. Right? Any kind of information gap tasks. Opinion gaps, where they tend to state their personal preferences or attitudes, feelings towards a particular topic. Now, using capital punishment. Is it fair to implement capital punishment for those who have committed crimes? Different students will have different opinions depending upon their religious values or depending upon their own personal experiences or any other situations that they have confronted. Right? So that is an opinion gap task. Role play, dramas, likewise. You can, like what we have already discussed, you can assign different model dramas or simulations or any other dialogues and ask them to act out certain roles in those dramas or simulation activities. Games, interviews, discussions, announcements, storytelling, debates, right? All those are oral tasks where you can utilize several language functions. Look at this task, go through it. Following are the principles used in teaching language functions. Match them with their consequence appropriately. You have principles that get related to teaching language functions and the consequence, why these principles are followed, the reason behind them are given over here. Now you need to match them. Let's look at the first one. One structure can have more than one functional meaning. One particular exponent can relate to more than one meaning, or it can reflect more than one meaning. How are we going to handle in those instances? How should that exponent be handled? Look at the consequence and try to find out.
Second one, ma'am. So you need to check the meaning thoroughly.
So we need to check the meaning thoroughly. Look for the second one. Find a function. The role relationship between the speaker and the listener will decide the functional exponent that is being used. What is going to be the consequence?
Third one, ma'am. So in the classroom, it is important to establish the
Establish
that one.
relationship between speakers in example and
example,
practice activities.
practice
Before
activities.
we start them to practice the activity, the role relationship between the speakers should be elicited. Who are they and how they get related? Third one, pronunciation in particular. Pronunciation in particular sentence and intonation has a key role to play in the functional language.
I think the answer is fifth one, ma'am. So it is important to provide students with plenty of controlled oral practice.
Third one, which one? Fifth one.
E. Yeah, fifth one.
E.
Plenty of controlled oral practice.
Yeah. Good. Number 4.
I think the answer should be A, ma'am. So you,
Yes.
yeah.
Time. So sometimes need to highlight the grammatical form. Based on the structure, if the exponents vary, you have to highlight the grammatical form, whether it's in the past, present, or maybe singular, plural, like. And the last one, it should be D, obviously. Some functions can be indirect and subtle. So it's important that the teacher make the context to the students. Contextualization should be done. Look, activities and aims. Some information gap activities, not only information gap activities, any procedure connected to language functions, teaching language functions are mentioned over here. You need to match them with the aim. Teacher plays a dialogue and asks the learners to think about where it is taking place. What is the aim of doing this
G,
activity?
ma'am, to check functional meaning. Answer G.
Answer G. This one.
Yes, yeah, ma'am. Check the functional meaning.
Where it is played. This is obviously a place. No, it refers to a place where means
I am understanding the understanding of the context. Yeah, if
check understanding of the context. Look for the second one. Teacher asks to read the dialogue and guess the relationship between two speakers. Done. I like the form control.
is it G, ma'am? Functional meaning.
No.
Not the meaning. I think.
Relationship between two speakers. Not the functional meaning, it has to be something different. Maybe depending on the role relationship. Speakers means what is the relationship that they have with each other. Depending on that, the language can differ.
Maybe appropriateness.
Check,
To check the
yeah,
language.
language
Yeah.
appropriateness.
Okay.
Third one. Teacher asks learners to read a series of short excerpts from a dialogue and decide on possible meanings of certain utterances. Read short excerpts and decide on meaning.
That should be the functional meaning, I think.
Functional meaning.
Yeah.
That should be functional. Yeah. You are correct. Number 4, teacher underlines keywords in the examples on the whiteboard.
To highlight the form,
The
ma'am.
form.
Or
Yeah.
to be.
B, to highlight the form. Teacher drills the prompts, focusing on stress and intonation.
To provide pronunciation practice.
Pronunciation.
Answer number 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Drilling relates to pronunciation. Teacher uses prompts to elicit a 4-line dialogue that exemplifies a functional exponent and gets learners to practice it. A prompt is used to build up a small dialogue and make them practice that particular dialogue.
Last answer, ma'am. To provide controlled oral practice.
Is it controlled?
Says the teacher uses prompts.
Semi-controlled.
Yeah, semi.
Okay,
Then
let's
provide-
assume the last one, to provide controlled. Definitely it has to be for oral practice. Therefore, either E or H.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Either you can connect it to provide freer oral practice or controlled oral practice. We'll check which one is going to be the most appropriate one. Teacher asked to rewrite the scrambled dialogue having a particular language function in a correct order. Which one is that?
Written practice, ma'am. Answer C.
Practice, that is, which one?
Written.
Answer C, yeah. To provide
Ask to rewrite.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
correct. Last
Yeah.
one, ask learners to perform a role play that offers an opportunity to practice the newly learned. So this is going to be freer one.
Yeah, ma'am. E.
So this has to be E.
Yeah, controlled
And
oral. Okay.
controlled will come for number
Sixth
6.
one. Yeah.
Right. Look at the background. That means what we need to focus when we teach functional grammar. The size of the class. That means the number of learners that should be there, an appropriate number of learners, and the language level of that set of learners, the different kinds of learners that can be a part of the group, and also the status of English in that particular locality. Wherever we are teaching functional grammar, we need to take the context, the social context in which the students are going to transfer what they have learned in the class, maybe at home or maybe in a different social context. So if at all, if they are living in a native speaking, English is spoken as a native language, or in a country where it is just used as an official language, or maybe in a second or foreign language context, that has to be taken into account when we teach the functional grammar. In the size of the class, read what is the most appropriate number of learners that we can have in the class. A diverse one, a large, diverse class. That means having different learners coming together from different cultures or backgrounds may not be a suitable target for a notional functional grammar. Hence, classes having 10 to 20 is considered the ideal, right? So the number of learners has to be restricted, most probably 15 to 20, 15, 16 is considered to be the ideal number. Plenty of interaction patterns. Why is it that we limit the numbers? So that each learner will get an opportunity to interact, to communicate with the other person, or maybe with several other learners. Each learner is communicating with the other. Descriptive functional grammar targets at the needs relevant to a particular population of learners. That means, how are they going to transfer these functions into their day-to-day life? If you are to teach them how to use the language function of requesting something at a mall or maybe at a boutique, they should be able to use it maybe at a mall or a boutique. If they don't have the need to use it there, then it's pointless trying to teach the child that particular function. That is why we are checking on the status of English, or how the language is being used in the social context. Though individual students may have varied needs, it may be possible to generalize them to some extent to the whole set of learners. So we can't cater to each and every learner. It has to be a general demand. Identify the needs prior to the lesson. The overall need of the learners should be taken into account. Then prioritizing the needs. What if there are several needs identified? We need to prioritize at least a few of them and teach. Due to time constraint, we may not be able to handle each and every needs. Therefore, prioritizing becomes very important. age relevancy, exponents connected to age relevancy and the ability to use them in their immediate context. Those should be taken into account when prioritizing. Then comes the language level of the learner. Learner language level means the level of language ability, how good the learner is in handling the language. Is he in a beginner level, elementary, intermediate, upper intermediate, pre-intermediate? These are the expected levels into which we are to classify or categorize the learners. Depending on their language level, the language exponent needs to be decided. And also, not only the language exponent, the methodology, particularly the task, the difficulty level of the task. The stages involved will be the same, but when it comes to practice and production stage, the tasks that we to the learners will get determined basically by focusing on their language level. In terms of language, a real beginner may need to focus on core vocabulary. We don't need to present very complicated exponents to the beginner level students, very simple exponents. A single word itself would be adequate. Advanced learners, you can even focus on using phrasal verbs or idiomatic sentences or any other idiomatic phrases. All those are possible. So very important for the teacher is to identify the language level of the learner and also remember the different levels under which they are to be classified. Then comes the different kind of learners. That means in a functional grammar lesson class, the learners are categorized not upon their language level, but upon how they participate. Based on their active participation, they fall under 4 kinds of learners. Some of them are known to be convergers. Then another group is known to be the conformist group. Then the concrete and communicative ones, right? So depending upon their participation, how actively they are participating, they are classified or categorized under these 4 kinds. Read who are convergers and conformists.
Convergers, conformists, concrete, communicative.
What kind of learners are tagged or named as convergers? Are they good in working together? Convergers?
No, ma'am. They prefer to avoid groups.
Yeah. So they are good in working individually. They are not good in communicating with others. They tend to be by themselves and learn the language, right? So convergers, they are not a good fit for a functional grammar lesson since they will try to avoid group activities or even pair work. See, appropriately suited learners, this particular group, to learn descriptive functional language realized by a communicative teaching approach. So functional lessons are always based on a communicative approach. That means they need to interact with each other. This set of learners are reluctant to interact. Therefore, they are not fit for this kind of communicative lesson. Conformist emphasize learning about language. They don't focus much on the usage of language. They tend to reflect more on the grammatical side, the structure of the language. So they believe if they happen to learn the grammar of the language, they will be able to use it properly. That kind of a notion fails in conformists over learning to use it. So they don't care to use the language. Oral usage or written usage is not their concern, but to learn the language, mostly the written part of the grammatical part of the language.
Is
Then
it actually effective, ma'am? Excuse me, ma'am. Is it actually effective?
no, it's not effective. Even today in classrooms, you find children who are very interested in learning the grammar. That is a common notion. When it comes to expressing themselves, even though they know the language, they won't be able to use it properly. Then comes the second group, concrete and communicative, more amenable. This group is better than that of the previous one. So these learners, they will contribute much and they will also learn much from a functional grammar lesson. See, concrete learners interested in language use and language for communication. They will make mistakes, but still the child will keep on trying. Errors will be part of their learning process, but they will be very good in communicating with one another and understand using the language. Communicative learners interested in social interaction with other speakers of the language. Group work, pair work, any kind of social interaction can be implemented with this set of learners, communicative learners.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Can't one student belongs to more than one category? Just like
No.
convergent at the same time.
Definitely, one student can fall under one of these groups. He can be a converger or conformist, or else a contrary. He will lean more towards one of these. Converger cannot be a converger. At the same time, he cannot be a communicative one. That is
Yeah,
important.
thank you, ma'am.
Then we come towards the status of English. That is the status of the language which is used in that particular country or nation, right? So when we do a functional lesson in a particular locality, we need to check on the status of English in that particular region. Is it being used as a native language, or is it used for official purposes, or is it used as a foreign language? Right? So see, if English is used as a native language, if we are doing a functional lesson in a native language, in a context where the language is used as a native language, it doesn't hold much benefit for the learners. See, learners learning English in a country where the native language of which is English, or in a country where English is a language, will benefit the most from functional grammar, right? So that means they will have more opportunities to use those functions or exponents or whatever that they have learned in the social context, since the language is being used very widely. You have the usage of the language spread in the society. Therefore, the child will be able to transfer what he or she in the classroom directly to the social context. Even when it comes to the official language, there are plenty of options where they can use the language. But when it comes to a foreign language context, then the opportunities are limited. Efficacy of a functional less when the learners reside in a country where English is a foreign language. Second language, foreign language context, when the language is being used in those two contexts, there are very narrow opportunities or very limited opportunities for them to use the exponents or the functions in the society. Right? So depending on the status of the language, we need to decide how successful the functional grammar lessons are going to be. Then you are given the reasons, just go through them. Look at your self-study task. Think of possible exponents, both formal and informal, neutral, formal and informal, one of them, for the following language functions. To introduce someone else, not yourself, to introduce someone else, you need to mention one formal exponent and one more either informal or neutral exponent. Same goes to suggestions or suggesting, one formal and one neutral or informal. Likewise, you have at least two exponents each for all these three language functions. Mention the aspects that you would pay attention to when handling a lesson on language functions. The level of the learners, the role relationship. What was the third one that I mentioned? When you tend to identify the exponent, I told you you need to take into account three important points. What were they? One of you, Nishadi, you were there when we discussed about it. Can you just recall and tell me? What is the soon after level of the learners? Something that starts with C, C-O-N, complete the rest of the word. Contextualization, right? Contextualizing the exponent. Right? When it comes to the language functions, we are going to decide on a particular exponent. You can't just abruptly present it in isolation. It has to get embedded in a proper dialogue or role play or any kind of text. So context, learner level, first comes learner level, then comes contextualization and also the role relationship or maybe the formality level that depends on the role relationship of the speaker. Then the last one, procedure of teaching a particular language function. You have to utilize a suitable example and explain the procedure. Okay, this is the procedure that we discussed. Don't just write all this. You comprehend and just explain during the first stage what has to be done. And then during the second stage, what and what has to be done. Likewise, we just explain all the 4 stages. So that's it. Are you in need of any?
Yeah, ma'am. First 2-3 slides, please. Practical approach.
Take.
Structure.
No, this is the day ones. Today's
Yeah.
one, you are in need of?
Yeah, ma'am. Today's one.
Okay, take.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, then I'll be meeting you on next Saturday. Before that, try to complete all the self-study tasks up to day 2 of unit 5. We'll be starting day 3 next Saturday, by next Saturday. So before that, try to complete all the self-study tasks. Okay then. Good night.
Okay, good night, ma'am.